My name is Princess Amina Al-Sadir, and I was 19 years old when everything began. It was April 14, 2021, a date I have never forgotten because that was the night I made a choice that changed my entire story. That was the night I secretly opened a Bible, something banned in my world, and that small act became the first step toward the danger that later came upon me. I want to help you understand who I was back then. I was born into a powerful royal family in Saudi Arabia. My life looked perfect from the outside. Beautiful rooms, shining halls, many servants and guards watching everything. But inside those walls, my life had strict rules. Every move was watched, every word was measured, every mistake could bring shame or punishment. My education was excellent, with private teachers who taught me languages, history, mathematics, and politics. But even with all that knowledge, there were limits. There were books I could not read, ideas I could not explore, questions I could not ask. I was raised in a home where everyone was expected to follow the same beliefs, the same traditions, and the same way of life without question. My family expected me to behave exactly like a royal daughter, quiet, perfect, obedient. I obeyed because that was the only way to survive. But deep inside, I often wondered if there was more to life than rules and expectations. It all began when one of the palace workers, a woman from another country, showed me a small book she kept hidden under her scarf. She told me that the book had changed her heart and given her hope during dark times. She revealed to me that the book was the Bible. She explained that people like her had to hide it because it was forbidden, and anyone caught with it could face serious punishment. The way she said it made my stomach feel cold, but something inside me wanted to understand what she meant by hope. That night, when the palace became quiet and everyone went to sleep, she slipped the book into my hand. She showed me where to hide it so no one would notice. She told me that if I ever felt lost or overwhelmed, I could read a few lines and feel strength in my heart. I did not know why, but her words stayed with me. So on April 14, 2021, alone in my room with only a small lamp glowing beside me, I opened the first page. I remember how my hands trembled, not just with fear, but with something new, something I couldn't describe. The moment I began reading, I felt as if someone was gently calling my heart from far away. I did not know it yet, but that quiet night would soon bring questions, suspicion, and danger closer than I ever imagined. And even though I could not see it then, this small beginning would lead me to the edge of a moment where my life hung between judgment and mercy. This was the beginning of my journey, the beginning of choices that almost cost me everything.
I remember the morning everything started to change. I woke up with a strange mix of excitement and worry, because the night before, I had read more pages of the Bible the worker had given me. I felt peace while reading it, but when I closed it, fear rushed back in like a wave. I hid the book under my mattress, making sure it was flat and invisible. I checked it 3 times before leaving the room. Life in the palace was always busy. People walked fast, guards stood with serious faces, and every sound echoed through the hallways. But that day, I noticed something different. There was tension in the air, like the palace itself sensed what I had done. My steps felt heavy as I went to my morning lessons. During my studies, one of the palace guards came inside quietly. He told my teacher that someone from the royal security team needed to check all rooms because of a strange report. He said it in a calm voice, but I saw the teacher's eyes widen a little and my stomach twisted. I immediately thought about the Bible hidden under my mattress. I tried to steady my breathing, but my hands felt icy. I remembered the worker who gave me the book. She once revealed to me that in our palace, nothing stayed hidden forever. She warned me that even small secrets could bring big trouble. Those words echoed in my mind as I sat at my desk, trying to appear calm. Later that afternoon, when I walked back to my room, I heard soft voices near my door. 2 guards stood outside. One of them held a small cloth bag. My heart started beating so fast it felt painful. When they saw me, they stepped aside, and I walked into the room slowly. My bed was uncovered, the mattress was lifted, and the Bible, my Bible, was gone. I froze. I could not move, speak, or even blink. I felt like the world had stopped around me. A woman from the investigation team came in behind me. She showed me the small cloth bag the guard carried. She told me that they found something unusual under my bed, something not allowed in the palace. She asked me to follow her for questions. That was the moment I realized I was no longer safe. I walked with her through the long, decorated hallway that suddenly felt cold and unfriendly. The walls that once smelled of perfumes and luxury now felt like they were closing in on me. Every step felt heavier than the last. She led me into a quiet room used for private interviews. The door closed behind me, and the sound echoed in my ears. She sat across from me and revealed that someone reported strange behavior from me: late-night lights, nervous actions, and keeping to myself. She told me that the guards checked my room because of that report. When she opened the cloth bag and showed me the Bible, my eyes burned with tears, not because of the book itself, but because I saw my freedom slipping away. She didn't yell or act harshly, but her calmness made me more afraid. She explained that keeping such a book could be seen as breaking family expectations, disrespecting tradition, and bringing shame to the royal household. Her words felt like small stones hitting my chest. She then said the royal council would decide what to do with me. She noted that the situation was serious because of who I was, a princess. My actions, she explained, carried heavier consequences because they could influence others or bring questions to the royal image. When she finished, she stood up and gently motioned for me to follow. She showed me to a smaller room where I had to wait alone. As the door closed, I felt the deepest fear I had ever known in my life. I sat on the floor, hugging my knees, wondering how everything changed so fast. One night of curiosity, one night of seeking truth, and now danger sat right outside my door. Hours passed, though it felt like days. Nobody came to check on me. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody comforted me. I could only sit there with the weight of my choices pressing on me, unsure of what would happen next. This was the moment my real persecution began, not with loud threats or physical harm, but with fear, isolation, pressure, shame, and the heavy knowledge that my own family would now see me as a problem. I was alone, completely alone, and the council had already started discussing my fate. I was still in the small waiting room when the sun went down and the palace lights began to glow. The whole place felt different in the dark, colder, quieter, and far more serious. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, trying not to cry, trying not to think of what might happen next. But no matter how much I tried to stay calm, my thoughts kept spinning around the same fear. What will they decide to do with me? I knew how the palace worked. I knew how the council handled any action that challenged tradition. I was a princess, yes, but that did not mean I was safe. In fact, being a princess meant my punishment could be even more severe because my behavior reflected directly on the royal family. That reality felt like a heavy chain wrapped around my chest. After many hours, the door opened. A man from the royal security team entered. He did not yell, but his face was serious, and his voice was sharp in a calm way that made me even more afraid. He told me the council was still discussing what my punishment should be. He explained that my crime, as he called it, was not small. He revealed that the council believed I had allowed foreign ideas to influence my heart, and that such actions could not be taken lightly. When he said those words, my hands began to shake. I tried to steady them by pressing them against my legs, but they still trembled. He then informed me that until the council reached a decision, I would be moved to a restricted room in another part of the palace. He did not allow me to ask questions. He simply gestured for me to stand and follow him. As I walked behind him through the hallway, I felt everyone's eyes on me. Servants who once bowed now looked away. Guards who once smiled now kept their faces hard and unreadable. I could almost feel their whispers following me, even though their lips did not move. For the first time in my life, I felt like an outsider inside my own home. The restricted room was small and plain, with no decorations, no soft carpets, and no windows, only a bed, a chair, and a single dim lamp on the wall. When the door closed behind me, I felt the emptiness settle around me like ice. I sat on the bed and wrapped my arms around myself. The silence was so thick that it felt loud. Hours passed, and the loneliness grew stronger. I thought about the worker who had given me the Bible. I wondered where she was now. I wondered if she was safe. I remembered how she once showed me her hands, trembling a little as she told me that following hope sometimes came with great risk. Those words returned to me like a whisper in the darkness. Later that night, I heard footsteps outside the door. They were slow and heavy. My heart sped up. The lock clicked, and a royal advisor entered the room. He looked tired, worn, and troubled. He sat on the chair across from me and took a deep breath. Then he revealed to me that the council had found my actions extremely serious. He told me that some members believed my punishment needed to be harsh to protect the royal family's image. Others suggested sending me away for re-education, while a few harsh voices argued for far worse consequences. When he said that, my stomach twisted so hard that I had to clench my hands to keep from falling apart. I asked what would happen to me, but he shook his head. He explained that the council had not reached a final decision and that by morning everything would be decided. Then he stood up and left me alone again. The silence returned, but now it was even heavier. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. I felt the fear of losing everything, my freedom, my future, even my life as I knew it. I felt the weight of shame, knowing my family saw me not as a daughter, but as a problem that needed to be fixed or erased. As the night grew colder, I curled up on the bed. My thoughts were too loud to ignore. I remembered my childhood in the palace, running through the halls, laughing with my siblings, learning from tutors, exploring gardens filled with roses and fountains. I remembered how my mother used to stroke my hair when I was sick, how my father used to lift me onto a horse and teach me to ride. Now, all those memories felt far away, almost like they belonged to someone else.
Tears slowly rolled down my face. They weren't loud or violent, just slow streams born from fear, confusion, and sadness. I whispered inside my heart, asking for help, asking for strength, asking for anything that could guide me through this darkness. At some point, I heard a soft sound, like someone standing outside the door. I sat up and held my breath. The doorknob turned slowly. The door opened just a little, and the palace worker, the one who had given me the Bible, slipped inside quietly. My heart almost burst with emotion when I saw her. She closed the door behind her gently. She moved fast, kneeling beside me. Her face was tired but filled with deep concern. She told me she had heard what happened. She revealed that she feared this would occur because the palace watched everything closely. She explained that many people in the palace already saw me as different, too thoughtful, too curious, too observant. She held my hands and told me that hope was still possible, even when everything looked dark. She encouraged me to stay brave and to trust that truth had a way of protecting those who sought it with pure hearts. Before she left, she pressed her forehead against my hand for a moment, a gesture of comfort and sympathy. Then she slipped out quietly, leaving me in silence again, but this time a different kind of silence, a silence that held a small spark of courage inside it. I sat on the bed and looked around the room. Nothing had changed, and yet something inside me felt different. The fear was still there, but there was also a new sense of strength, like a tiny flame inside my chest refusing to die. The council would decide my fate in the morning. I had no control over that, but I realized something important. Even if fear surrounded me, the choice of who I wanted to be was still mine. I lay down, staring into the dim light, waiting for dawn to arrive with whatever destiny it carried. I did not know it then, but the morning would bring the most unexpected moment of all, something I could never have imagined, something that would change everything. Tears slowly rolled down my face. They weren't loud or violent, just slow streams born from fear, confusion, and sadness. I whispered inside my heart, asking for help, asking for strength, asking for anything that could guide me through this darkness. At some point, I heard a soft sound, like someone standing outside the door. I sat up and held my breath. The doorknob turned slowly. The door opened just a little, and the palace worker, the one who had given me the Bible, slipped inside quietly. My heart almost burst with emotion when I saw her. She closed the door behind her gently. She moved fast, kneeling beside me. Her face was tired but filled with deep concern. She told me she had heard what happened. She revealed that she feared this would occur because the palace watched everything closely. She explained that many people in the palace already saw me as different, too thoughtful, too curious, too observant. She held my hands and told me that hope was still possible, even when everything looked dark. She encouraged me to stay brave and to trust that truth had a way of protecting those who sought it with pure hearts. Before she left, she pressed her forehead against my hand for a moment, a gesture of comfort and sympathy. Then she slipped out quietly, leaving me in silence again, but this time a different kind of silence, a silence that held a small spark of courage inside it. I sat on the bed and looked around the room. Nothing had changed, and yet something inside me felt different. The fear was still there, but there was also a new sense of strength, like a tiny flame inside my chest refusing to die. The council would decide my fate in the morning. I had no control over that, but I realized something important. Even if fear surrounded me, the choice of who I wanted to be was still mine. I lay down, staring into the dim light, waiting for dawn to arrive with whatever destiny it carried. I did not know it then, but the morning would bring the most unexpected moment of all, something I could never have imagined, something that would change everything. Tears slowly rolled down my face. They weren't loud or violent, just slow streams born from fear, confusion, and sadness. I whispered inside my heart, asking for help, asking for strength, asking for anything that could guide me through this darkness. At some point, I heard a soft sound, like someone standing outside the door. I sat up and held my breath. The doorknob turned slowly. The door opened just a little, and the palace worker, the one who had given me the Bible, slipped inside quietly. My heart almost burst with emotion when I saw her. She closed the door behind her gently. She moved fast, kneeling beside me. Her face was tired but filled with deep concern. She told me she had heard what happened. She revealed that she feared this would occur because the palace watched everything closely. She explained that many people in the palace already saw me as different, too thoughtful, too curious, too observant. She held my hands and told me that hope was still possible, even when everything looked dark. She encouraged me to stay brave and to trust that truth had a way of protecting those who sought it with pure hearts. Before she left, she pressed her forehead against my hand for a moment, a gesture of comfort and sympathy. Then she slipped out quietly, leaving me in silence again, but this time a different kind of silence, a silence that held a small spark of courage inside it. I sat on the bed and looked around the room. Nothing had changed, and yet something inside me felt different. The fear was still there, but there was also a new sense of strength, like a tiny flame inside my chest refusing to die. The council would decide my fate in the morning. I had no control over that, but I realized something important. Even if fear surrounded me, the choice of who I wanted to be was still mine. I lay down, staring into the dim light, waiting for dawn to arrive with whatever destiny it carried. I did not know it then, but the morning would bring the most unexpected moment of all, something I could never have imagined, something that would change everything.
I did not sleep that night. I lay on the thin mattress in the quiet room, listening to every sound in the hallway, the steps of guards, soft whispers, the hum of distant voices. My heart beat so loudly in my chest that I wondered if the guards outside could hear it too. As the first light of morning slipped under the door, I pulled my knees to my chest and held myself tight. I knew the council was gathering. I knew they were discussing my actions, my disobedience, my shameful choice, as one advisor had called it the day before. The fear pressed on me so heavily that every breath felt slow and hard. After some time, the door opened and 2 guards stepped inside. Their faces were unreadable, cold, quiet. They told me the council was ready. My legs felt weak as I stood up, but I forced myself to walk. The hallway seemed longer than ever, like each step carried me deeper into uncertainty. I was taken to the council chamber, a wide room filled with carved wooden chairs, bright lamps, and the long table where serious decisions were made. The atmosphere felt heavy, almost suffocating. I walked in slowly, keeping my eyes on the floor, because I didn't have the strength to look anyone in the face. The royal council members sat around the table, their expressions hard. My father, the king, was there too. His face looked like stone. When he looked at me, I saw no warmth, only disappointment and tension. I felt my whole body tense with fear. One of the older advisors stood up and revealed to me that they had reviewed my case. He explained that I had broken the rules of the royal household. He reported that I had brought danger to the family's image. He stated that what I had done was not simply disobedience, it was considered betrayal. I felt my knees go weak, and I gripped my hands together tightly so they wouldn't shake. The council then discussed possible actions. Some wanted me removed from the public eye completely. Some suggested isolation for many years. A few suggested something even harsher. I felt my heart squeeze painfully inside my chest. The words being spoken around me were not loud, but they cut into me with a quiet, cold sharpness. Everything felt slow and blurry. I could barely breathe. Then something happened that none of us expected. As the council continued speaking, the room suddenly grew still. I cannot fully explain it, but the air itself felt different. Warm, soft, and peaceful. It was as if someone had walked into the room without making a sound, someone whose presence silenced everything without force. I looked around, confused. The council members grew quiet. Even my father stopped speaking. And in that strange stillness, something inside me changed. My fear didn't disappear, but it was pushed back by a strong feeling of calm. It felt like someone was close to me, not in a way I could see, but in a way I could feel deep inside. I felt strength rush through me gently, like warm light filling the cold places in my heart. I sat taller, my shaking stopped. For the first time since everything began, I felt safe. I remembered the worker who had given me the Bible. I remembered her telling me that hope had a way of finding people who searched for it honestly, and at that moment I understood what she meant. One of the council members suddenly paused and looked at me differently. He then revealed that he believed punishment would not fix anything. Another council member agreed softly. Slowly, more voices shifted. The anger in the room began to fall away, replaced by uncertainty, then by thoughtfulness. It felt like a gentle hand had turned their hearts.
Finally, after a long silence, my father spoke. His voice was still stern, but it was no longer filled with the harshness it held before. He told the council that they would not carry out severe punishment. Instead, he decided that I would be placed under close watch, kept away from public duties, and expected to rebuild trust with the family. It was not freedom, but it was life. It was hope. When he said it, my whole body loosened with relief. Tears filled my eyes, not loud, not dramatic, just warm tears of thankfulness. I nodded quietly, unable to speak, but inside, my heart was overflowing with peace. After the meeting, the guards escorted me back to my room, but this time the walk felt different. I no longer felt like I was walking toward darkness. I felt like I had stepped out of something heavy into something new. Later that afternoon, the palace worker came to see me secretly. When she entered the room, she held my hands with shaking fingers. She told me she had prayed for me all night. She revealed that she believed a miracle had happened in that room. She explained that sometimes help arrives in ways we cannot see with our eyes, but can feel deep in our soul. I believed her. That evening, as the sun went down, I sat alone and watched the sky turn orange and pink. I felt a peace I could not explain. What I went through had changed me forever. It taught me that faith could cost something, sometimes something heavy, but it also showed me that hope is powerful enough to meet fear in the darkest places. My life was no longer the same. My heart was no longer the same. And even though I knew I still had challenges waiting for me, I also knew that I was not alone, not anymore. This was the beginning of a new dawn for me, a dawn that came with courage, with faith, and with a new strength I never knew I had. My story may be fictional, but it reflects the real struggles many people face around the world. Many believers still experience fear, pressure, rejection, and deep pain because of their faith. Please take a moment to pray for them. Pray for strength, protection, and courage for every heart that suffers silently. And if you are reading this and you want to turn away from sin and begin a new life with God, you can pray this simple prayer in your heart. God, I come to you today. I want to change. I want to be close to you. Please forgive my sins and make my heart new. Help me follow the right path. Thank you for loving me. Amen. If you prayed that sincerely, then your new journey has begun. You are not alone.